Welcome back to a bevy of bloods for round 15 of the 2023 AFL season. Regular halftime report correspondent superfan Sam joins the potty for the first time as Noddy and Sam break down the Swans' total dismantling of the Eagles. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a definitely biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved Bloods. G'day there, Signets and Swanlings. My name is Noddy, and I'm joined by regular bevy contributor today, Sam. Welcome to the potty, mate.
Thanks, Noddy. Good to be here.
Good stuff, mate. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection to the Swannies.
So my connection to the Swans starts back in, I think it's 1994. My mum's cousin, Simon Arnott, was drafted to the Swans. So he was drafted alongside Mickey O'Loughlin and Matthew Nicks,
Awesome.
Who are still very good mates of his to this day. So he ended up playing with the Swans until 1998, so the year I was born, and then he moved to Geelong to 2 seasons. Anyway, then I went to quite a few games when I was young, but then, sort of grew up as a, kind of a fan, watched the grannies, watched a few games here and there, but it was like 2010, I started to get a little bit more into it. I started seeing Kieran Jack play, and I was like, geez, he's a good player. Then 2011 came around, and the season started with a draw against Melbourne, and then I think there was a close game against Essendon, and we beat West Coast, actually, and I didn't like West Coast, still don't, because of the 05-06 grannies. And anyway, first game as a, super fan, was Luke Parker's debut in round 8, 2011. And then I went to Swans Carlton a few weeks later. We got flogged by Carlton, actually. And then from round, I think it was 21 that year, or 22, against St Kilda, we kicked 10-22 to 10-10. So we won on by 2 goals on behinds. It was 82-70 or something like that. Maybe it was 84. I can't remember. But haven't missed a game in Sydney since, and went around the country in 2016. Went to 2012 grand final with a broken leg. And then last year went to all the games in Melbourne, including the very unfortunate grand final. But it's a big passion of mine. So yeah,
it's a sincere pleasure for you to join us on the potty, and we love you. You're part of the O'Reilly rabble, mate. And I'll tell you what, there's probably no one more passionate than you. Maybe Jules, but thanks, mate, for your time tonight. And let's get into it. All right, so before we kick off, if you enjoy our podcast and want to show your support, make sure to follow us on social media and wherever you're listening to your podcast. We really do appreciate it. All right, let's get stuck into the game details. Last Saturday night, our Sydney Swans defeated the West Coast Eagles by 171 points. Don't adjust your frequency, that's correct. With a final score of 31 goals, 19 behinds, for a total of 205 to 5 goals for 34, which coincidentally was how many? It was the score of Isaac Heaney, but we'll touch on that later. All right, Sam, it's a big one. First impressions. What did you make of that?
Well, we just played amazingly. We were on from moment one. I think we scored 22 seconds in. And then the second goal was, I think, still in that, or at least the mark by Goulden was still in that first minute. And obviously West Coast only had the one scoring shot in the first quarter, and we didn't lay off in that first quarter. Logan kicked a goal after the siren, so it just showed the effort that we put in. We probably could have even been further up, with 4 behinds. And there was some opportunities where we could have been a little bit less selfish in the first 2 quarters. That's being very, very picky and very critical, because we were pretty selfless all night on reflection. But we actually could have been further up. Second quarter, West Coast came back at the start, kicked 3 goals to, I think, our 1 or 2 to match it. So they were actually leading that. But we ended up winning that quarter, and I guess we won it convincingly in the end with kicking 5 goals 5. The third quarter was some of the best football I've ever seen us play. And even in the second, that was the second half of that, the third quarter, setting us up to for that last quarter where we thankfully cracked the double ton.
It was incredible, and mate, I'll tell you what. Like when we kicked those first two just back to back very quickly, I thought, oh, good lord, I think we're on for a day here. And then they bounced back quickly, and then I was like, oh man, oh no. The Eagles are going to beat us. We're going to be that team. But very thankfully, obviously, wasn't to be, and we went on and just stormed home. Look, it was a beautiful, beautiful afternoon. There was a gorgeous sunset there behind the members' stand there. I had my sisters-in-laws come along, one of them for her first game, so maybe she's a good luck charm. Shout out to Holly. Thank you. But look, obviously, mate, you've touched on it. It was an incredible win against an objectively terrible team who are having a shocking run of it this year. But you have to celebrate the wins when they come, especially with all the injuries we've had this year, and boy, did we win this one. Mate, let's crack on to the good, the bad, and the stats. So what are you thinking here, mate? What do you want to kick off with?
Well, to start off with the good, I thought our efficiency was awesome. I think it was 65% efficiency inside 50, and if you round up, 80% disposal efficiency. So that was awesome. I think the fact that we won pretty much all stats. We didn't win stoppage clearances, but we won the overall clearances, and we even won the tackles when we had over 100 more disposals. So that there is the good stats.
Yeah, mate. I mean, look. Okay, so I've picked out a bunch of these record-breaking stats, right? So I'll shout out a couple if you see one. Feel free. But obviously, the big talking point is that it was our equal highest winning margin in South/Sydney history. Obviously, the last time we won a game by 171 points was against St Kilda in 1919. Where we kicked 29-15, 189 to 2-6-18. Fourth biggest win in VAFL history, which was the biggest one was 190 points, Fitzroy over Melbourne, 1979, and the biggest since 2011, which again was against Melbourne by Geelong, was 186 points. So West Coast biggest loss in their history. Very proud club, the Eagles, obviously. But look, they had 11 games this year where they conceded 100 points or more. On the scoreboard, they've had 4 games where they've been beaten by a margin of 100 points or more. And funnily enough, those 4 teams, apart from Adelaide, who are just on the cusp, they're all outside the 8. So Carlton beat them by 108, Hawthorn by 116, Adelaide by 122, and our dear Swans by 171. So, look, what's your position? Just question without notice here, mate. The Eagles, obviously, they're going through a tough time. We're looking at each other during the game. It's like they legitimately look like they don't want to be out there. How did you see any glimmer of hope for them? Not that's what this pod is about, but let's take a couple of moments here to just go. The Eagles. What's going on?
It's really interesting to see like a club, irrespective of what club it is, at this rock bottom point when they have premiership players from 5 years ago and they have players that should be able to stand up. Like in that team they had 6 playing, and then they've got another few out injured, but even then, it's just crazy that they are hapless, and they just don't have, the youth in the team aren't bringing much, which then they shouldn't be expected to, but that would be sort of the glimmer of hope from them. And I thought Jimby actually looked all right the other day for them.
Yeah,
he had moments where, I was thinking, who's number 7 for Eagles? And then I was like, oh, Jimby, okay, no, he looks like he's kind of having a crack, but it is really dire. And personally, I love it because I hate West Coast. I love seeing them down the bottom, but I do feel for their supporters because they would be a very passionate supporter base, and it would be really, really hard to watch them go out and really produce nothing, because I don't think even in the couple of years where we were down 2019 and 2020, we were never like that, even when we were losing, it still looked like we cared. Yeah. We still had some close games against some decent teams. We still pinched a couple games we probably weren't expected to here and there, and yeah, so I do feel for the fans, but in the same token, like West Coast on the bottom is something that doesn't happen often, so I'm relishing it.
Totally. And look, it's of their making. There's a lot being discussed in the media now. They went all in to try and capture a couple more flags. I think we found out this week that Kelly and McGovern are like highest paid, like third and fourth highest paid in the AFL. Obviously, McGovern is one of their big outs, along with Cripps, Hearn, and Ryan from the Premiership team. But Barras was in, Darling was in, Duggan was in, Yo was in, Shuey's in, Sheed, and Gaff, I think. Or did he play? He might have missed because of the
Gaff
punch.
missed because he punched
Yeah, that's right.
Brayshaw in the face, and Natanui missed because I think he was injured, and Brad Shefford did a hammy like Benny McGlynn in 2012, and he was out. I actually really felt for those players when they missed out, because like they all deserve to be in there. So that's something that I do have sympathy for West Coast, is those players who deserved a flag that missed it. So
that didn't. It was a cracking grand final, obviously, but just to your point about their youth, there's a big gap between their seniors who aren't really carrying the load and those junior players, these waffle players. There's 10 players who played against the Swans that have less than 49 games of experience. We've got half that, 5, but then we've got like the bulk of our list, 9 players in that sort of under 100, 50 to 100 range, and then it's fairly even from there. So look, I don't know, I would have thought that the waffle talent was probably good enough to step up, but yeah, there's something definitely not going right, and they're obviously backing in Simo, and we saw that moment between Horse and him, and obviously they played together at North all those years ago, so that was quite nice to see. But look, what are you going to do? I mean, I guess my point with all this sort of discussion is there's been a lot of discussion from Swans fans on socials about we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. They are the worst team, and by a long way in the comp. But at the same time, they've played like I think 5 of the top 8 teams. They haven't played Brisbane, St Kilda, and Bulldogs, I think. But they played everyone else, and the winning margin by them was only like 68 points. So we should take something away from this, in that it was just an absolute bloodbath. It was clinical, it was hard, it was a 4-quarter effort, that old cliche. 18 consecutive goals from midway second quarter through to the halfway point of the fourth. Just phenomenal. So if you can't enjoy moments like these, and have some grace in victory, but you can't ever. So I don't know. I'm probably in the former camp. I don't know about you. I thoroughly enjoyed that game, and it was just nice to see your team run amok. Don't you reckon?
I loved it. Like we needed that win. It's been a pretty harsh season at the SCG. A couple of close losses. That Freo game and the St Kilda game were both games that we really could have won against teams that weren't in great form, and we didn't turn up. So it was just nice to see a win. Like it was really nice. One thing I want to mention as well, back on what you were saying before about the youth in West Coast team, and I guess we were there a couple of seasons ago, because a couple of seasons ago we didn't have those 50 to 100. It was all under. But I think our players, they weren't playing as key roles. And I don't really know why it's not happening for West Coast, because if you look at the players who are in there, they've got Barras at the back, who could be like their Dane Rampy. They've got
apparently
Darling,
we've got interest in him.
He looked good. He actually the other day took a lot of good marks on the weekend. And then they've got a strong core of players who, in all fairness to them, have been quite injury prone, haven't been able to get on the park, specifically that midfield. However, they do have that experience there, but I think that there's something really going wrong at West Coast internally, whether that's the players, whether that's the coach, I'm not sure. If I was in charge, I would be very hesitant to assure Adam Simpson's future for the rest of the season, because I think a circuit breaker could do wonders for them in terms of getting a reaction. However, I do understand that his hands are tied, and he doesn't have as much of an option to change the team. But it's tricky because the some of the players, there's opinions out there that they're getting a free ride. So they're not doing it like we did it really well, and there's been other teams that have done sort of mini rebuilds or integrating youth well, and like their youth are just seemingly trying to play too key a role too early, and they can't handle it. But look, I also think, as you know, and as I said on 9 News before the qualifying final in Melbourne last year, that it's one game at a time and I never get ahead of anything. So even though the weekend was great, hopefully we've played 20 of the 23 players, or maybe 21 of the 23 players back into really good form. We can build on that. However, the step up from West Coast, who are a clear 18th, to Geelong, who are they're sort of like spluttering, like we are. They're sort of trying to get started and then they're not. So they're in a very similar position to us. It's very much do or die for them as well. But I think that I think that we've got to maintain that momentum.
Definitely, mate. And you mentioned circuit breaker a couple of minutes ago, and I think that's good because I was lucky enough to have a bit of a chat with Isaac Heaney at the Clock Hotel afterwards for the doozy night that they had there, which is obviously that brand of alcoholic seltzers that is run by Ollie Florent, Will Hayward, Will's brother, and Isaac Heaney. Had a quick chat with him and obviously congratulated him for the effort, 5-4, and we'll talk about him later. But I just said, how did it feel? He goes, no, it was really good, sort of dust off the cobwebs. And then I think he said the word circuit breaker, or maybe I did, so I might have led with that. But, I mean, you get the feeling, or you have this hope that this is the game that launches us. And we'll get into that. We'll get into the road home later on. But, yeah, it was wonderful. It was a good win. As you said, let's take 1 week at a time. But before that, let's talk about some of the favourite moments. Obviously, there was a stack of them, and everyone's going to have their own favourite. But do you want to kick off with yours, mate, if you've got a positive one?
So, look, I think that the best moment of that for me, I've got a few, but it was the 200 moment, which happened twice, actually, because everyone at that stadium thought Hayden's shot went through. So, hitting the 200 mark twice was great. The first and the third quarter were just amazing. The dynamic duo in Chad and Errol, their games, for me specifically, Chad's second quarter, like back-to-back goal assist to Amadi, and that goal where he got out the back and sort of just like chipped it in almost like a golf shot and rolled it in. It was they were my favorite moments.
It was great to see. I mean, it's hard to pick out. I thought like Campbell looked good. We're going to touch on him. I just thought like one of Heaney's goals, I don't know which number it was, but it was in the third where he crumbed and then got a left foot dribbler through, and it was just class. It was classic Heaney. The heat on fire as always. And I was going to say that McLean's absolute howler to miss, because that play might have been like a goal of the year contender. Obviously with Lizard just slithering out of the back half and just the setup, it was just brilliant. And I still don't know how he missed from there, but it didn't matter anyway because he was the one who then brought up the 200 himself with the check side. So
yeah, he made up for it.
Yeah, a lot of great moments.
Yeah, I think on the missed chances, I think also one of my, ironically, and I think simply because of how the game went, one of my favourite moments, but also such a missed chance, was Warner's miss in the last quarter, where that could have maybe not been goal of the year, but it could have been, potentially a goal of the round contender, where he just kept giving it off and getting it back, giving it off, getting it back. He gets to 10 metres. He's probably almost too close to the player in front of him, and he tries to chip it and just misses, and he straight away went down like, oh no, like he's missed it. Also, Heaney had another shocking miss, which was kind of similar to the highlight of the dribble, but he had another option to dribble it and he missed. So there was 3 opportunities there where we really could have, that would be an extra 15 points, 1 + 5 obviously, that we could have got. And on that, I actually went through and watched all of the behinds. I watched all of the goals back, but I watched all of the behinds back, and they're like those three were the worst misses. But we had some there was a couple of shots from Heaney that could have gone either way. There was one where he could have centred early on. There was an average set shots from McLean, a couple from Papley, a couple from Seldrick. There was, Campbell was super unlucky when he hit the post. Ollie could have lowered his eyes. Clark in the last quarter, it was another set shot miss. So if we, had better set shots there, or got a little bit lucky, there was a couple unlucky with Rowie. I think Chad had one that was pretty unlucky. So did Sheldrick. Sheldrick had a shot that was all right, but we really could have capitalised more. Beef. Sorry, I've got to start calling him Beef, don't I? And
it's just the nickname that we use for Angus.
I love it, though. I love it. And then, and even with drop marks, like we had Marty in the first half, dropped quite a few. Papley. I thought Papley, there's been a bit of criticism of Papley. I thought he played, he had so much effort, he was so energetic, but he did drop a lot of marks and he wasn't the cleanest. Clark dropped a few marks. And, in defence, we had Aaron Francis, who I saw dropping marks left, right and centre. We could have held the Eagles to less than Isaac Heaney's Heaney's score if Clark wasn't 20 metres off Jack Darling for his first goal in the second quarter.
Clark or Francis?
Francis. It was 20 meters away, so he really could have done better there. But I would say, they're probably the missed opportunities that we had, and we could have gotten the Swans' highest score ever, potentially the highest score ever, the highest margin ever. But in saying that, again, being super critical, especially of the front half players, I think criticism's warranted at the back half. But for Papley, Amadi, Clark, and all the set shots, they still all played amazingly. So.
Definitely, mate. And the other thing I'll say, I forgot to mention, obviously there was the QBE, one of the main sponsors. They were committing $3,000 per goal for charity, and I don't know if they meant to choose this game. I don't know if they saw this coming, but it ended up, I think, 93,000. So for a good cause, obviously, and I'm sure they got enough cash to spare, but perhaps they didn't realise it was going to be as big a game as it ended up being. But that was a good moment as well, I think, in the end.
Maybe they've got to do it more, and the Swans can keep kicking record scores.
Maybe that's it, mate. Maybe QBE needs to commit 3,000 or 5,000 per goal every game for the rest of the season. No pressure, QBE. Moving on to the BOB, the Bevy of Blood medal, which is obviously our equivalent of the Bob Skilton medal, where we give 3, 2, 1 points to the best Swans players as per our opinion. And then this week, obviously, the winner wins a pet eagle, which is actually just a budgie with a severe identity crisis, obviously. So in points, 3, 2, 1, like that, we've got Errol Goulden taking the 3 points. We've got Chad Warner taking 2, and Isaac the Heat Heaney taking 1. And I'm going to kick us off with Errol, mate. Errol, like my lord. You and I think we're the only ones that play fantasy in the group. But he's had a cracking year to date, but this was one of his big games. And you look at some of these stats, 32 disposals, which was second highest on ground at 75%. I think he had 22 kicks or something. 3 goals, 0 behinds. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming. 13 score involvements, 3 goal assists, 7 inside 50s, 5 tackles. I don't know. He just sharp as ever, but just looked amazing. I mean, it was, as you said, him and Chad and Heaney just running amok in the first quarter, but he continues to lift his game, and it's just incredible to watch, isn't it?
I think it is, and I think the key thing for what separates Goulden and Warner here, as for Goulden to get 3 and Chad to get 2, is Errol was just on from the first moment, and he did his damage, almost more of his damage when the game could have been on the line, in a sense. Warner was there probably more so in the second quarter. But But in terms of that first quarter, Goulden was just on. So he was fantastic, and I think that I'm not a big fan of the songs after the goals, but like Oh Errol is just it's just great. Like that song should be played almost after every goal.
Well, let's face it, Errol probably had a hand in every goal anyway. So, me too, mate. That's one of the ones I do like. It's a keeper for sure. Let's go to the Chad, mate. And I think you've got some special comments.
Look, I mean, I never thought that I'd be able to love a player as much as Kizza, but Chad is kind of on this kind of parabola where they'll eventually even out. I think.
Yeah, right.
None will be ahead of the other. Those two are just they're my favourites. But nice. And there's a time where I was on him before a lot of people were, and he's become an absolute superstar, which makes me feel a little bit of a bandwagoner on the outside. But I know internally that I've been on him before everyone else was. But
well done, mate.
33 touches, so that was the best on ground. 703 metres gained. Best on ground, 11 inside 50s. I'm surprised if that's not best on ground. He had 19 score involvements, which is best on ground, and 4 goal assists, best on ground. So you can see that the competition between those two, it really could have gone either way. They were both sensational, there almost should be a shared medal for that game, and there almost should be a shared points, because you can't, when you look at the stats, you can probably say that, Chad did more, but you just can't, because the stats don't justify what Errol did as well. They were both just amazing. But
it's possible that we really are sort of trying to separate two fantastic games, and maybe if we're being critical, it's the 2 goals too that Chad kicked. But I mean, maybe if he kicked 4-0, then he would have taken over Errol,
or even 3-1. So look, it is that's how it is. I think we should actually take some of the votes from that Geelong game earlier in the season and bring them into this game, just to spice up the bob, because there's a lot of deserving vote getters in this game. But Warner with 2.
Definitely, and you are right. 11 inside 50s is best on ground. So his kicking has improved this year, and it was on display during this game. Obviously, we have got Isaac the Heat Heaney in one position, so third there. Obviously, as we touched on, he's kicked 5 goals, 4 behinds. Some of those were gettable, but we're not gonna complain when the Heat's kicked a bag. He himself got 22 disposals, 10 of which were contested. He was looking good in the forward 50. He was obviously running hard in defence as well, but it really was he had the impact up front, and obviously with Mills coming back in, and some of our structure, obviously with Rampy a couple of weeks ago, Melican obviously playing a role. It's sort of hard to talk about structure in a game like this when it was just one-way traffic, really. But 6 forward 50 ground ball gets, which is best on ground. That just shows you he was attacking well and attacking hard. And we just all love seeing him. Right, he's a gentleman. He's he's really one of the the shining lights of New South Wales footy. With coming through the academy system. What can you say about him? He's a gentleman as well. He's a good bloke when I chatted to him. So
he also had 18 score involvements too from 22 touches. So
thank you very much.
That is, I think, let me just do some maths
Second.
there. That is 82% of his touches led to a score, which is phenomenal, because Chad had the 19, but that would be roughly 60 something percent. Heaney had 82% of his touches led to a score, which is amazing.
Yeah, unbelievable. Very justified 3-2-1, I think. But that said, we had a stack of honourable mentions, and we tried to limit ourselves, but we really didn't. And I'm just going to list out the names, and then let's just have an open conversation. With Parker had a blinder, Hickey had a blinder, Rowie had a blinder, Angus Beef Sheldrick had a blinder. Our 3 young talls we'll talk about, Juzzy and Clark even as well. So let's start with Parker, mate. So
I would argue that Parker's game would normally would normally warrant 3 votes. Like, he was awesome. I actually watched First Crack on Sunday, which is random. I don't normally watch a lot of footy shows because I just don't really. I probably have the access to them, but I just don't even think to watch them. But from that game, they actually highlighted Luke Parker and showed his clearances out of the middle and how he unleashed the ball, to the outside runners in Goulden and Warner. So he was awesome, and also his positioning around the stoppages. So he had 10 clearances in total, which was best on ground. He had 13 ground ball gets out of 28 touches, so that was best on ground. 18 contested possessions, don't know if we hit that already. 6 score launches, which was equal best on ground with Tom Hickey. So yeah, he was awesome, and then I think he's got a little bit more to follow on there.
Well, yeah, his pressure acts, mate. Like, so he's obviously a hard nut, and his tackles are usually pretty high. He was equal best on ground with Rowie for pressure acts, so that's a bunch of the corralling and all that sort of stuff that they include. But he also, of that, he had 12 defensive half pressure acts. So, he's working hard when he had to. And I think I saw somewhere on one of the groups or on one of the shows that over the past 4 weeks, he's actually the best rated player in the AFL. Which is funny because I thought he missed a week, but maybe they're including that.
Maybe they're talking about his last 4 weeks.
His last 4, yeah, okay.
His last 4. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, I think your point there, like the clearances there, him and Hickey combined really, really well. And obviously it's hard to sort of confidently say, to know where we're at when we're playing the rabble that is, West Coast. But, Hickey himself had 13 contested possessions, 7 inside 50s, 7 total clearances, and then, as we were saying, 6 score launches himself. So Hickey looked really good. And if he's feeling fit and firing, obviously, last year he was a big reason behind our success. So, it was really nice to see, Parks and Hickey, cracking on. Obviously Mills is in there as well, but before that, Rowie just continues to put pretty good games together, wouldn't you say?
100%, yeah. No, so he had 25 pressure acts, which was equal best on ground with Parker, as you mentioned. 13 tackles, so he's second in the AFL for that, almost 8 tackles per game, which is amazing. But he's behind Matt Rowell, who's almost he's at 8.5, so he's 10 ahead, which is amazing to think about. He had 5 centre clearances. He had 27 disposals and other 20 contested possessions, which was best on ground.
That's huge. That's huge.
9 clearances in total, 12 ground ball gets. Which is, I guess, second best on ground to Parker. So,
that's right.
He was awesome. One thing on Hickey too, I loved seeing Hickey on the weekend. Hickey, when he's at his best, reminds me of he's like an extra winger. He's always out on one side as an outlet, and I just love seeing him there, because it just shows how hard he works. Because obviously, he's a big boy. I'm sure he's got a great aerobic tank, but compared to, people 15, 20, 25 centimetres shorter, it just wouldn't compare. But he just works so hard to get to the space so he can be that outlet. And he was back to that on the weekend, and I hope that this game, and gives him confidence to get, and, just gives him a good run to get back to the best version of Tom Hickey.
Definitely, mate. Rowie, 13 tackles. It's just, the mind boggles, doesn't it? And he's backing it up week on week. His numbers alone, Rowie, are probably good enough to have gotten a 3-2-1 in a normal week. But
you know what? If he had the two misses, which they were both really unlucky, especially that one in the last quarter where he just turned. He didn't snap it, but he, for lack of a better word, turn and snap. But it was a drop punt, and he hits the post, and it was close to that 200 mark, and that was rough, but he was awesome, and I wouldn't even say that his goal kicking was a blemish. They were both unlucky behinds. Yeah,
mate. Beef, look, he obviously extended recently, and we're all very, very happy with that because he's starting to show, a reason why, he was fairly highly touted over in WA, but still relatively, picked out of nowhere by our own Kinnear Beatson, in a sense, but got the Rising Star nom this week. So 29 disposals, 12 contested possessions, kicked 1 goal, 3. I mean, if he kicked 4 straight, I mean, that's a pretty good game as well.
And I mean, these two set shots, he kicked, two very similar set shots the week before against Brisbane.
Them. Yeah.
And the miss he had would have been an awesome goal. It was pretty unlucky. He just kind of snapped in, it was almost on the goal square. It was kind of over the shoulder, around the body sort of kick, and it just went through. It was nowhere near, but if he kicked that, it would have been awesome. But I don't think he would have got 4 straight. I think, he probably could have got to 3-1 in 3-1, one way or another.
Yeah, mate. We've got the 3 young tools. So Logan, Amadi kick 4 goals straight each. McLean 3-2. News is Amadi's just extended to the end of season 26, which is awesome. McLean's contract negotiations are currently underway. We're hoping that there's a similar result there. I think because they look good, didn't they? These three tools.
They did, and Logan and Amadi early. Amadi probably could have kicked 7. He dropped some sitters in some great spots, but they were awesome, and it's so good to see them kicking accurately. And the thing, it's really funny. I was chatting to Brett at the start of the fourth quarter. Not even the start, to be honest. It was like 10 seconds before the third quarter, being like, "Geez, McLean hasn't got in on the act yet," and I think it was like 15 seconds later, McLean kicked his first goal, and it was like, oh, there you go. It was a bit of a blessing for McLean that Amadi went off for a rest. Just with that, I guess that serious hamstring injury, because then he sort of got his time in the sun, and really he should have kicked 4. He had the set shot that he missed, which he could have converted, but we'll leave that. But that miss at the end, that should have brought up the 200 that he ended up getting the next chance to. I just don't know how he missed that. Yeah. But he was great in the last. But even before then, he was more the option up the field. That was kind of that the roaming forward. He was in the ruck. He had a lot of hit outs as well. So he was more around the ground, and that, I guess, sort of centre half forward that was kicking it into, let's say, the 2 full forwards in Logan and Amadi. He did not have a bad game before the last quarter. It just wasn't showing on the scoreboard. So they all played really well. Good to see Amadi get through unscathed. And Logan get through unscathed. So, and all 3 to having a really big impact and a good game.
Yep, and I think your point about there with McLean being the more, the one that sort of roams a little bit more up the field with that other role. We've consistently said on this podcast that his running numbers are elite. He's doing 14 or 15 kilometres a game. He's up there with the mid, so it stands to reason that he's the other chop out at this point for Hickey. But we know that he's got a very good clean set, a clean set of hands as well. Can take a very good mark at either end of the ground. So yeah, it was just pleasing to see all those 3 guys getting a bit of a look at it. Juzzy, he was doing Juzzy things, wasn't he?
He was. He had the 3 goals, and they were all fairly inconsequential goals in a sense. When they were kicked. But the snap at the end to get us up to 197 from the boundary line, that was a great one. But he was, I would say, of the pure outside players, he was the standout of our outside players. I don't think that our halfbacks had a great opportunity to show off in this game, given the dominance. So I think Juzzy was probably playing more on a wing than he was half back, and he was sort of that cream on cream of the crop. What am I trying to say there?
Cream on top.
Sure, we'll go with that. The cream on top of all the inside work that we didn't have coming from anywhere else. Because I think at times Goulden was on the outside, Warner was on the outside, Hickey was on the outside, probably
Campbell. Was as well.
Campbell was good too.
It was lively.
But Sheldrick would have been on the outside, but Juzzy was the real standout of that pure outside player that didn't go on the inside at all.
Yeah, mate, and we've got Clark here, so he obviously kicked some good goals early when the game was on the line, and I think he did everything he could have done to hold his spot. But I think we're going to talk a little bit about that in a couple of sections from now. So did you have anything to add about Clarkey there?
I think it was just, he missed a set shot late, which I think that might, even though it's just a one blemish when it didn't matter, there was no pressure on him. That could, be a moment that could come back to haunt him a little bit. But in terms of early, he was clinical. He had the goal set up from, I'm fairly sure it was Errol. Then, he
was a great
had
kick,
a snap.
Inside
it was,
kick from Errol.
And the snap as well. So he was clinical when the game could have been on the line. Outside of that set shot, and a couple of drop marks, he didn't really do anything wrong.
Yeah. So we'll keep that in mind when we go through the team ahead. But let's take stock of everything, right? So let's figure out what this all means. So obviously we're coming 13th now with 6 wins and 8 losses with that huge percentage boosting effort. We're now on 113.3. I think we lifted at 15%. And in terms of the road ahead, talk us through how hard it's going to be.
Look, we're going to go off current rankings at the moment. So one thing that this win's great, and we can talk about this win for years, but what this win needs to be is the catalyst for moving forward for the next 9 games. Definitely. So we play, as the table currently stands, Geelong, who have had the wood over us the last 2 games, and demolished us. So they're in 9th. We then play Richmond on a Thursday night at the MCG, who are in 12th. We play the Western Bulldogs at home on a Thursday night, who are in 7th. And we play Freo, who are 11th. Then Essendon, who are 6th. Giants, who are 14th. Gold Coast, who are 10th. Adelaide, who are 8th. And then Melbourne, who are 4th. So pretty much every game, I'm going to say bar the D's game at this stage in the season, and I'm hoping bar the Gold Coast and Giants by the time we play them. The reason I say that, not that I don't want Giants to make finals at all, but I don't mind the Gold Coast, but I want them to be almost out of the running to give us more of a chance to sneak in, and that those games can, that we've got a little bit more to play for than them by the time we get there. But the next 4 weeks against Geelong, Richmond, Dogs, and Freo, Essendon and then Freo, so 5 weeks. Sorry.
Oh no, you were right. Freo then Essendon.
Freo. Oh, is it? And Freo is. I thought it was. You're right. No, sorry, my bad. Got my away games around the wrong way. Freo then Essendon. So the next 5 games are all 8-point games. All of those teams are at the lower. Actually, most of those teams are outside of the top 8 right now. So they are all, trying to get in. And then we've got Essendon and the Bulldogs, who are on the bottom end of the 8, who are trying to stay in. So we need, I reckon, to win of those of the next 5. I'm going to say we need to win 4 to give ourselves a real chance. It could be 3, but if it's 3, we need to be perfect in the last 4. So I would say that. Of the next 5, I hope, if we're serious, we need to win, especially against Gold Coast, Richmond and Freo. We need to win those games more than any, because Essendon and Dogs, we do need to beat them to catch up, but it's the teams around us that if they get too far ahead, to be honest, they're just all really important games. And then,
I feel like we basically, we kind of need to win every game, right? I mean, that's how difficult the position we're in, right? When every game really needs to be like a grand final, and
it's
so that's going to be
momentum as well. Yeah, the momentum we need to get into finals in good form, and to get into finals with confidence that we can challenge.
And if any team can do it, Sam, I reckon the Swans, with the professionalism and the players coming back and the belief, if anyone can do it, we can. That's my level of supporting. Obviously, it's going to be very, very difficult, but this is why the Cats game this Friday is so important, because not only do we need to break this mental hoodoo, and we're going to talk about that in further detail after this, but it really is going to be the proper, as you're saying, catalyst, or the real gauge of where we're at after this huge Eagles win, right? And if we can back it up with some good form and put it together, then there's no reason we can't launch pad into that month and a bit of these critical games of teams that are sitting around us. It's just it's going to be nerve-wracking, but it's going to be exciting, I think.
This Friday is probably our most important game of the season.
Definitely.
It really is do or die. We need to build on the momentum that we built against West, from that game against West Coast.
Yep.
And we need to get over the mental hoodoo against Geelong. And on your point of, if there's any team that can do it, it's us. I mean, look, one game at a time. I don't like to make predictions, but going off historically, I've seen us do it twice before. In 2017, when we started the season 0-6 and came back and played finals and won a final against Essendon, then we got flogged by Geelong. And then even last year when we lost to Essendon in Melbourne, and I just remember we were up by so much in the first quarter too, and it was like, I don't even know if we're going to make finals, and then we didn't lose a game up against Geelong. So
was it like nine in a row or something, wasn't it? Or thereabouts.
Essendon, I don't know.
After Essendon, I thought it was like.
Yes, sorry, I thought you meant during that game.
No. Yeah, we frustratingly lose. We've lost a couple of close ones to the Bombers over the previous few years. So
won a couple of close ones too. That's the great games that we play against Essendon.
So that's another one that's like, we've got one of these teams that's not a little, I guess, kind of a bogey, but they always end up being like classics and close. So, why couldn't we have just had the Eagles again or something like that? But obviously there's integrity, and we did come second last year. So, look, let's jump into the Cats game. We've spoken about it, so let's dig in. Obviously, we take them on this Friday night at the SCG in our most important game this year since the grand final. They're ninth, as you've already said. They're on 7 wins, 7 losses. They have a pretty good percentage, 114.2, and they have won 2 and lost 3 over the last 5 weeks. They've beaten Melbourne and Western Bulldogs, so pretty good opponents there, but lost to Port, GWS and Freo. So hard to get a read there. Obviously, they've had a few injuries, but let's talk about our own injuries. So in the game against the Eagles, Hayward was laid out due to illness. I think I've seen tonight that he is good to come back in. Obviously, Clark came in for him, and then Fox was 23rd. Who came on for Millsy when they arrested him. But look, I don't know. Where are we sitting? Let's just have a bit of a chat about team changes, possible ins and outs. What's your read on it, mate?
Look, it's really tricky because you don't want to unsettle a team that just won by 171 points. But there does need to be one out for this game, and that's Aaron Francis.
If it's Tom McCartan coming in?
It doesn't matter. If it's Fox coming... My take on it is Jeremy Cameron is out.
Thanks, Gaz.
With concussion. Yeah, that's legit though.
Excellent.
Jeremy Cameron is out. So that takes away the need for us to play as many talls. In saying that, let's say Fox or McCartan, doesn't matter, but Fox can play tall, but we would have Pelican, who's in great form, or I think anyway.
Who can?
He can. And we've got Rampy, and we've got Blakey, who's shown this season that he has the ability to play tall. So let's say Fox came in, he can also play tall. So we've got options that can play tall, but we want to have flexibility in this side that can play small as well. Because Geelong are going to have Tom Hawkins They may have, depending if they play Segler and Stanley, or Segler and Blixarves, or Stanley and Blixarves, however, or even all three, they still could have tools. But Geelong's danger this season has been Brad Close. It has been Brian Myers. It has been, Gary Rowan the last few weeks. They've got Ollie Henry. They've sort of got these mid-size, quicker forwards, and I don't think that Aaron Francis being 10 metres away from Jack Darling shows that, he's going to play an integral part in this game against Geelong, who have a shorter forward line, especially with Jeremy Cameron out. And I can't see them bringing a key forward in to replace him.
I think it's fair to say that Francis has shown a lot this year, but it's clear that he has, certain areas of his game are stronger than others. So he's a fantastic interceptor. I think some of his one-on-one lockdown work could be improved, and I think he's been asked to play a role that maybe he wasn't brought into the club for. He started in the VFL. He was prepping for key forward. So obviously, just through the spate, just all the injuries we've had with Paddy and Tommy and Rampy, down back, he was pretty much asked to play a role. And even Melican, he's only just come back in, play a role where he might not be super comfortable. But yeah, look, I agree. I think, and I think most people were a bit confused when Fox was dropped. I mean, he was asked to play that forward role a couple of weeks ago, and then he was omitted. I think Fox is one of our best players, just always. But it certainly was in the grand final, wasn't he? He was
for game. Me, and as I've said, Chad Warner is my favourite player, and technically he was the best ranked player on the ground, but for me, best player in that grand final was Robbie Fox, who effectively kept Jeremy Cameron to one goal himself in the last quarter. The other goal Jeremy Cameron kicked was that wraparound where he got the handball from Dangerfield, where Fox could do nothing. So Robbie Fox was amazing in the grand final last year. He was also our best rebounding player, so I didn't like seeing him dropped. On Aaron Francis as a forward, I don't think he's a forward. He's missed at least 5 set shots that are very gettable. He hasn't kicked a goal yet. Robbie Fox as a defender came in and kicked a goal last week, so I don't see the value of Aaron Francis playing forward. You could argue...
Oh no, I'm not suggesting that for this game.
He's an average interceptor, but he drops a lot of marks.
I think that's unfair. I think he can intercept if that's what he's doing. But I think he's being asked to lock down, and that's where he's a little bit out of his comfort zone. But the bigger elephant, I think the bigger elephant in the room really is Buddy, right? Does Buddy fit into this team of 3 tools that we just wax lyrical about who are fit and firing? Like, I genuinely, I don't know.
I don't want to comment.
It's going to be interesting to see.
I'm not one of the people. It is tricky. Buddy has struggled this year, whether that be injury, whether that be age, whether that be the way we're playing.
Bit of all three, I think.
Whether that be kind of individual form. So it's tricky, but he's a legend, and this is highly likely going to be the last time we get to see him, and he does have that X factor that no one else has. However, based on the 11 goals kicked by the key forwards, excluding probably the only player that can, maybe one of 2 in the team, being the other one being Chad, of Heaney, who can rival Buddy with that X factor kicking another 5. The forward line functioned really well, and again, who knows if that's just because it was against West Coast, but it's going to be really tricky to bring him back in with such a big game, with sort of limited match fitness, given he's missed quite a few of the most recent games. Everyone's in good form. Who would go as the second ruck out of Logan and Amadi, given their injuries to their recent leg injuries? McLean is the perfect player for that, and I can't see any of them getting dropped, and I can't see us playing with 4 key forwards in this game against Geelong, especially when they're going to be lighter on tools and they're going to have more run. So for this game, as much as it's hard to say it. I think that we've got to leave Buddy out.
I think it's a tough call that needs to be made. And just get to their back line, obviously they do have a bit of height. They got Sam de Koenig. I think Asava is coming back in. The rest of them, Tom Stewart is a third tall. Jack Henry, 192 centimetres. So they do have a bit of height about them. And I know that they've got some mids that they can run back through there. Buse is sort of that third tall, but can go lockdown as well. It's going to be. It's obviously there's not too many other options in the VFL. Obviously, Tom McCartan was really good last week. So whether they think he's ready to come straight back in, it looked like probably he was, and you would think that for a game like this, you would bring him in. But of the others that are thereabouts, Stevens, Corey, Arnold, Stretch, Edwards, I don't think any of those guys are really ready to come in if we're looking at a squeeze between Hayward, Clark, Fox, McCartan, and Buddy and Francis, all these guys anyway. So I think we've figured out what the selection dilemma is going to be, and it's just going to be how they want to go, knowing that there's Cameron out. I think Scott has said Danger will play, but I'm sure Danger will find a way to make it about himself somehow. Asava back in, as we said. Stanley's back in. Tomahawk. I don't know. They've got weapons all over the ground, but I think we've covered off really who we're going to be able to combat that with. So it's going to be. It's always interesting with teams, but this week has an extra sense of importance to it, doesn't it?
It does. I've just also had a look as well at when you were talking about tall defenders and who can play tall for Geelong. Their shortest defender is Jed Buse.
Buse at 186 or so.
186.
Yeah.
They're even Mitch Duncan, who's rolling back there at half back, he's 187. Tom Stewart's Tui. 190. Yeah. Tui is 180, I think 187.
7 or so. Atkins can drift back, and he's that sort of shorter role. And Zach Guthrie, I think
Zach Guthrie's 188 or 189. Same with Mark O'Connor. So they're Jack Bowes, he's 188, 189. Their whole defence is actually really tall, which is funny to. I just didn't realise they were all so tall. But then also realising that none of them are that short as well.
So you think we would probably try and have a few talls to make the contest, but then more of those smaller fleets just picking up the crumbs. But I'm sure it'd be
good if Sammy Wicks was available this week.
So is this his second week, or is he back? Would he be in contention? Because I totally forgot about.
So he got the. I think he was very lucky to only get 2 against Brisbane, given what they're suspending people for tackles they're calling holding the ball. James Sisley, shout out to Zach, a Hawthorn mate of mine. So I think that he was very lucky to only get 2, but that was Brisbane. So West Coast was the first game after the Brisbane match, and now Geelong will be the second.
All right.
So I think that Hayward in for Clark is 50-50. Hayward hasn't been in great form this year, so we'll have to see. If we do keep Clark in, I would like to have a plan for him to probably lock down on Duncan or Tom Stewart. If that's, Tom Stewart may be unplayable, but Duncan may be. But they're both very good players. So, if we keep Clark in, I hope it's for a plan. And then the other change I would want to see is Aaron Francis out and Fox in. If McCartan was brought in, I wouldn't be unhappy. But I don't know if it's essential for him to come back, just yet.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. And given the road ahead that we've already touched on, maybe it is smart to give him another week just to find his feet, as it were. But look, obviously we've touched on the key matchup. Stengel's down on his output last year, but as is our Papley, so I think that's sort of nullified. How do we get the win against a team like this? It's demons. It's mental demons, isn't it? Really.
Yeah, I think we've got to go out and just try and play our best game. And I know that's the most stereotypical cliche thing ever, but I think
4-quarter effort.
yeah, no, I'm all about the 4-quarter effort, to be honest. I love that. So I was going to say that, but you took the words out of my mouth. No. So I think that we need to go and sort of get back to that short kicking game. Although I did see that Geelong are defending. It's sort of like they're defending the space, so they're making teams kick long, and with that tall defence, it is the ridiculously tall defence that I didn't even know was so tall until tonight. Their strategy sort of makes sense. That kicking long against Geelong is not going to win the game. So we need to be sharp and quick and move the ball and take the game on. And we sort of need to go for it, even though I can see why that's perilous. But I think that we need to, for the next 9 games, we need to try get back to that beautiful ball movement of 22, and we need to get on a run, and we need to back ourselves in and back our creativity and our youth and our speed and our good qualities to try and win this game. That's my
humble request.
humble request. That's my hope. That's my dreams. That's however you want to put it. I think that for me that's how we're gonna
get it
come
done.
against it is focus on ourselves, not on Geelong.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think most of the Swans army out there are probably going through having the same thought and are hoping the same thing. I think we just want to give a good effort off the back of this record-breaking win and hopeful circuit breaker or launch pad catalyst. But more than anything, I think we owe the Cats a couple. So I want to see that as well. I want to see some ruthless tackling. I want to see backing each other in, helping each other. If there's any niggle, I just want a hard bloods effort, and we're going to be there, and we're going to be screaming our heads off, and hopefully we can get it done. Obviously, mate, have you got anything else before I head into the one last thing and wrap up?
Well, mate, thank you so much for having me. I've loved it. This has been a blast. So,
it's good therapy, isn't it? It really is. It sort of just gets everything out. You can really just talk through things. It's good fun.
Yeah, no, I love it. Anyway, on to you, mate. Just thank you for having me. That's all from me.
Thanks for your time, mate. I appreciate it. And obviously, fans, look out for Sam at the halftime report for our games rolling forward, and probably at some point on the potty here again in the near future, mate. Thanks again. All right, one last thing. Obviously, just want to have a shout out to our regular host this year, Chris, who is currently having fun in Europe. And no, he had nothing to do with that coup d'état in Russia. That was not him. He's not there. He is on an engagement moon with his lovely fiancée, Danny. They are currently in Basel. And I think they've been on e-bikes traversing the countryside between France, Switzerland and Germany, and the weather is lovely, and they're in love, and they're the best people, and we just want to say have a safe trip and a beautiful trip, and congratulations again on your engagement. We're all over the moon, and we couldn't be happier for you guys. So safe travels, and I will be running the show with Chris's help, doing the technical stuff on the road for the next couple of weeks until he comes back, and then he will resume the hosting duties going forward.
Yeah, congratulations, guys. I haven't seen you guys since you left, so congratulations. Hope you're having a great time over there, and if we kick another 200 points this week, you may need to extend the trip.
Exactly. Stay over there. It's either that, or I need to bring Holly back to the Holly and Bree back to the next game. That was her first AFL game ever.
Test it over the next 9 weeks to see what we can do to get the most wins.
Oh.
What was I going to say? I've just blanked. I had one more thing. Oh no, Danny, we've missed you at the footy this year. Haven't seen you yet, so it'll be good to see you at a game as a engaged woman later in the year.
I think I definitely have been to a game with Danny this year. I don't know where you were. You might have been.
Oh, was it the St Kilda game where I was sitting?
Yeah.
Oh, because I was sitting with work people over in the members area. So she might have even used my ticket.
That's right. It's probably that was the situation. Yeah. Well, there you go. But here's to hanging out and the Swans winning a few more, if not all more, games of the year going forward. All right, mate. That brings us to the end of this episode. So on behalf of Bevy of Bloods, BOB, just want to say thank you very much for everyone listening in, as always. Please make sure to follow us wherever you get your Swannies news and listen to your podcasts. We're looking forward to you listening to our next review, but we're also looking forward to maybe seeing you at the SCG on Friday night. We're going to be there, screaming our heads off, bringing the boys home from the O'Reilly, the rabble, as always. Until then, up the Bloods,
and
can you Swannies?